Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to Willow Creek. So today's gonna be a fun day. We're gonna be canning a crap ton of salsa. I have tomatoes galore at the moment, and everything that I haven't put in the freezer, I've just been accumulating slowly to make big batches of salsa with. That's probably one of my husband and I's favorite thing that I can every year. I have some peach salsa that I'm gonna do in a different video, but this video, we're gonna do tomato-based salsa step by step. So I'll walk you guys through the process of how I do it from start to finish. And we are going to be using the bulk book of home preserving. And you guys will be able to find the recipe on 201. This will be the fresh vegetable salsa. Now, I'm not going to follow the recipe to a T. If you're new to canning, I would highly recommend that you follow the recipe to a T, but there are going to be some substitutions that I'm going to do, and I will let you know exactly what those substitutions are and when and where I do them. So tag along for the rest of the video and let's can up a bunch of salsa together. Okay guys, so first and foremost, let's just do an overview of some of the supplies that you will need. So anytime I'm doing a canning day, I always have my canner going, like before I start all of the processing. I just get my jars in here. They're in here to be heating up. I have it on about a 6. You don't want these to be boiling or anything. You just want the jars to be hot because we will be cooking this salsa before we process it. So you'll need a big stock pot to put your salsa in to cook it over the stove. You will need tomatoes. Now, this is not all of the tomatoes that I have. I have way more on the kitchen table, but I just brought a bunch over here to get started with. Get you a cutting board, a good knife. I use a food processor. You do not have to use a food processor. You may dice all of the stuff that we're going to be putting in the salsa by hand if you would like, but I figure why not let the food processor do it for me. Get you a big bowl to put your tomato stuff in, and then you will also need the rest of the vegetables and some other ingredients that I will mention throughout the video. And I will also link down below like the detailed description of the quantities that you will need for each ingredient as well. So for any time that I can salsa, I always start processing the tomatoes first because the tomato quantity is going to determine how many times we can either double, triple, quadruple the batch. So for one batch of salsa, for this particular recipe, we need 7 cups of tomatoes. So I'm going to go ahead and start processing all of these tomatoes first. I'm going to put them in this big bowl, and then we will measure the tomatoes out together to put in the big stock pot, and then that's going to allow me to determine how many times I can multiply this recipe. So when you're making salsa, I would highly recommend that you start with your tomatoes first. Okay guys, so first things first, I just went ahead and stuck a trash can over here beside me so that I can take all the tops off. So in order to prep the tomatoes, I just take the tops off and I go ahead and core them. Like so. So get your core out. And then I just give each tomato like a rough chop. So chop it this way, and then I kind of do like 3 here. Do 1 down this. And then I'm going to start getting these placed in the food processor. Now, my husband, like I said, really enjoys salsa, but he likes a finer, like pureed salsa. I'm more of a chunky salsa person, but he likes his pureed, and my husband likes very spicy stuff. I do not. So I've already made a batch of mild salsa for me, and then this batch is going to be for my husband. So we are going to spice this up, and we're gonna puree this a little bit finer than what I normally would make salsa as. But that's okay. He enjoys it. He says it works better on a chip for him. So that's what we are going to do. And then if you notice, like go around and go through, if you notice any bad spots on the tomatoes that you're using, just go ahead and trim those pieces off. See, and then like here's another one. And I probably should have gotten to some of these tomatoes way sooner, but you just got to make it work when you can, and today is the day that I have to do it. So I'm just going to keep going with all of these tomatoes until they are fully processed and blended up. Okay guys, so got all of the tomatoes processed. So now I am going to start measuring out the tomatoes so that I know exactly what I need with the other ingredients. So I'm going to go ahead and get a measuring cup out, and I'm just going to use my 2-cup measurer because it makes it super easy, but we did get quite a bit of salsa, so that's super, super exciting. So I'm just gonna give this a stir really quickly and we'll start measuring it out. So we need 7 cups per recipe. So, and it doesn't have to be like, you don't have to be super, super specific, but you know, get it as close as you can. So I'm gonna go ahead and count these out really quick. Okay, so we got 30 cups of tomatoes out of that. So 7, 14, 21, 28. So we are gonna be quadrupling this recipe. So next I'm gonna start processing the onions, peppers, cilantro, and all of the other ingredients that we need for this. So we need 2 cups of onions per 1 batch. So we're gonna do 8 cups of onions, and I'm gonna start working on that now. So this is not all the onions, but these were just the ones that are left in that bag over there. So I'm going to use these first, but you don't really need to wash your food processor out every time you use it because all of the ingredients are going in there together. I just like to get my prepping space and stuff wiped down and get the counters wiped down again so stuff's not getting really sticky, but we're going to do the exact same thing with these onions, you guys. I give them a very rough chop, and then I'm just going to let the food processor do the work for me. And then also, I made some mild salsa the other day, and this is just onions and cilantro that was left over for it. So I just stuck it in a freezer bag. I'll drain the liquid out of this, and then we will get that in the pot as well. Going to go ahead and pulse this. So you don't want it to run for like a super long amount of time because we're not looking to like puree the onions. You just want to give them a pretty fine chop depending on how big you want them in your salsa. Okay, so now this recipe calls for 1 cup of peppers per batch that you're making. So we need 4 cups of peppers. And this is something that I like to do whenever I have just a mix of peppers. I go ahead and throw them in a freezer bag and chop them up for salsa specifically. So this is just a mix of like bell pepper, poblano, jalapeno. There's some sweet wax in there, banana pepper. You can really get creative with it. Throw any pepper that you want in there because chances are you're not really going to be able to taste like the flavor components of this so much. And this will likely not be enough. So I have more bell peppers over there that I picked the other day to use as well. Let's see what that looks like. So now I'm just gonna start scooping this out because my bowl's dirty from using it from the tomatoes and I don't want to get out another one. So I'm just gonna start scooping this out into my measuring cup and measuring how much this is. So I'm running out to my garden to grab some more hot peppers because that bag that I chopped up only had jalapenos and poblanos. And I know my husband's gonna want it spicier than that. I don't want to burn him too bad. Otherwise I'd grab some habaneros, but I think I'm actually gonna grab some serranos and get those in the salsa as well. And my serranos are finally starting to turn red, which is super exciting. I think I'm gonna leave the red one and just grab a couple of the smaller green ones so that these can continue to ripen, and that way I'm not picking the ones that are about to turn red because I do want to make some hot sauce. So I'm gonna grab one of those, and then I'm gonna grab just a couple of jalapenos as well while I'm out here. Now I'm only grabbing just like a handful of hot peppers because Like I said, that bag that I already used with the peppers does have jalapenos and some poblanos, but I also have a seasoning pack that I am going to use that is for medium salsa. So we'll taste it after I get it all done and ready to jar up. And then if I feel like it's not spicy enough for my husband, I'll just add some more to it. These, like if you're working with really hot peppers and you don't have a food processor, I would highly recommend you wear gloves. But I'm just gonna take the tops off of these and stick them in the food processor. So these are the serranos and those thicker ones are the jalapenos. And I will get these processed up. And then I am going to take this extra bell pepper that I had on my table and put it in there as well because I was just a little bit short on the 4 cups for the bell peppers. So I'm going to get this in here with the hot peppers and just process them all together. Okay, and then I'm also going to get some cilantro in there. I washed this off and put it on a paper towel. Now, it calls for you to measure the cilantro. I never measure it just because it's really difficult to do that. So, I mean, I just chop it and kind of incorporate it in something that I'm already making. So I'm going to get this chopped up and then put it in here as well. And I'm only going to use 1 bunch at the moment. I did buy 2 bunches, so I will taste the salsa and see if I need to add more because we can adjust before we jar it up. And here's what all the peppers and the cilantro is looking like. Oh, and just a note, be careful breathing this in because depending on the peppers that you use, these fumes can be really strong. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get all of this stirred in. Oh, and I forgot to mention, guys, whenever I started putting the tomatoes in, I went ahead and turned my stove on like a medium heat. So you definitely want to start letting this warm up as you're adding stuff. Otherwise, if you get it to this point and try to turn your oven on, it'll take forever. So just go ahead and start letting it warm up as you add the tomatoes in. Okay, so next thing I'm going to add in here is a can of tomato paste. Now, this calls for 1 of the smaller cans per batch. I don't want to add like the entire amount that it calls for, so I'm going to go ahead and just add like the next size up. Like this is a 12-ounce can, so it would be the equivalent of 2 of those smaller cans, maybe a little more. And so that'll be half of what a quadruple batch calls for. But I do like to add the tomato paste because it does help thicken it and it gives it like a really nice salsa flavor whenever I go ahead and mix it with all the other seasonings. So I'm going to get this open and go ahead and add it to the pot. Okay, so next I am going to add lime juice to my salsa. Now, the original recipe calls for vinegar. It says you should use 3/4 cup vinegar per batch of salsa. Now, I don't know about you guys, I don't use vinegar in my salsas. I don't think that it tastes right at all. So if you would like to do the full amount of lemon juice, or if you're new to canning, I would recommend you do that. However, I use citric acid in my jars for just my salsa because I like being able to kind of customize the flavor components and not have it be drowned out by lemon juice. It's not that I don't like it, it's just not my favorite. So I'm gonna add lime juice to this. If I had fresh limes, I would do that, but anytime you are canning, you wanna make sure that you're using like bottled lemon juice, just so that you can guarantee the acidity. And I always go ahead and just use bottled lime juice as well, so I can guarantee some acidity with this. But if I had fresh limes just for taste, I would add them to this. I just don't. So I'm gonna go ahead and add about 2 cups of lime juice, and then the rest of the jars I'm gonna go ahead and add citric acid to. Now, if you're not comfortable making switches like I am, follow the recipe to a T. It is okay to switch lemon juice for vinegar though in canning. So any of your recipes that call to use vinegar, lemon is an appropriate, any of your recipes that call for vinegar when water bath canning, lemon juice is an appropriate substitution. So you are totally okay to do that. I just prefer not to muddy this down with a ton of lemon juice. So like I said, I'm gonna put some lime juice in here, and then each one of my jars is gonna get some citric acid. So that's how I do it. If you're not comfortable doing that, of course, always follow the recipe, do what you're comfortable with. And don't listen to me just because I do it. Make sure that you're educated on proper things to do when canning yourself. And The recipe in the ball book also calls for garlic and cumin. Now I am going to add a seasoning packet, so I'm not going to worry about any of that. But like I said, I will post the original recipe in the description just so you have it. You can also get on the Ball website. They have all kinds of their recipes on the website for free. So that's also another option if you don't want to buy the book. And I am going to add one of these seasoning packets from Miss Wags. Now, there is a recipe on the back of this that you can follow to a T as well. You do the exact same process, only it calls for vinegar. Again, if you don't want to use vinegar in your canning, use lemon juice. But there is a complete and total recipe that you can follow. But this is just the seasonings. And I like adding the seasonings to the mild salsa and the medium salsa. So that's kind of why I didn't go too crazy on the hot peppers. So I'm going to add this, and then we'll have the jalapenos and serranos in here, and this is the medium. So after I add this, I'll give it a taste and see where it's at flavor-wise, and then we'll adjust, and then it's ready to jar up. So go ahead and get yourself a new spoon, because you don't want to like use the same spoons and things when you're canning, just for bacteria purposes. So always make sure you're using a new spoon. But we are going to taste this. So, and I may regret this because I'm not a huge fan of heat. Okay, so to me that's not that spicy, so and like I said, my husband loves spice. Like he really likes spicy. And I know that, but I always kind of walk on the side of caution because I don't want to make it too spicy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some homemade dehydrated pepper flakes. Now these are from Thai chilies that I grew last year, and they are incredibly hot. Like these pepper flakes are very hot. So I'm going to be sparing on it, but I'm just going to add some more seasoning like this to this until I get like the temperature that I know my husband would like, because this is definitely not hot enough. So we're going to start sparingly and then add more. And this is a pretty big pot, so we'll need probably quite a few. So I'm going to start there because like I said, these are very hot, and we'll see how far that gets us. I am going to go ahead and add some cumin to this too, because I think it would be good to add some in. The original recipe called for it anyway, and cumin just gives it that, like, I don't know, smoky salsa flavor that you would kind of expect it to have. We'll do some cumin in here as well. New spoon. Okay, that's a little bit better, but still not quite there. So I'm going to add just a little bit more of the hot pepper flakes, and then I think we're good to go. I'm scared. The more I add to it, the more I'm scared to taste it. Oh yeah. It's good. Okay, so now we're just gonna go ahead and let this warm up. You don't need it to boil or anything by any means, but go ahead and get it up to temperature, and then we will get it off the stove and start processing it and getting it up in our jars. Okay, so here is our big, beautiful pot of salsa. So I also reserve all of the juice that I get from my salsa and can that too. It's really good in like Mexican style fries or Bloody Marys, especially if you're making a hot batch of salsa. It's really good to use in Bloody Mary mixes. So maybe I'll do a video on how I do like homemade Bloody Marys or homemade cocktails as well. So, but that's just like a second product that you can get from making salsa. So here's the batch of salsa that we have, and then I have a bowl and a sieve right here to drain out the salsa, and then we'll grab the chunkier stuff out of the sieve and we'll get it in our jars, and then down here we're also going to collect the juice. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started and kind of move our pot over here, and I am just going to start ladling some of this salsa in here. You will also want a funnel, I forgot to grab this, and then a debubbler. And you can use like a chopstick or a knife or whatever you have. I just so happen to have one of these, so. Okay, and as you ladle this in, you'll notice the bowl down below will start to fill up with juice. So I just kind of move the salsa bits around so that we can get the juicier portion out of it. And then from the top, I just start ladling this into my jars. And you want to leave an inch headspace. So I'm gonna get a couple of these filled up, and then I will put the lids and rings on them, and then we'll get them back in the canner and finish the rest of the batch together. Okay guys, so I almost forgot to add the citric acid. So this is citric acid. This will help your product acidify. So we are gonna do 1/4 of a teaspoon for our pint jars. If you were doing quart jars, you would add 1/2 teaspoon. So we are gonna get, see, and I already filled some of that up, but that's okay. I'm just gonna put it in over top of it. So I'll get some citric acid in this one, and we'll get it in the rest of the jars before we start filling them up as well. And then I just kind of use the debubbler to push it down as I go. We want about a 1/2 inch headspace per jar. That's about perfect on that one. Then you can just stick this in one of the jars so you don't have to get your table all dirty. Does anybody have any good salsa recipes that aren't just the generic tomato-based versions? Like I've seen a couple people post like jalapeno salsa, cherry tomato salsa. I'm getting ready to do peach salsa. I've never done that before, but super excited for it because I did try one. It was like a Hy-Vee brand peach salsa, and I loved it, and they don't carry it anymore. So I'm gonna try and recreate that. But if anybody has any good salsa recipes, let me know down below, because I make a ton of salsa, and I'm really wanting to get like more creative with my salsa making, so. And if you find that you've gotten too much in one of the jars, you can just kind of scoop it out and make room in some of the other ones. Now when I notice the bowl back here is getting filled with liquid, I just take that sieve, put it in the top of this, and I just go ahead and you do want to put the citric acid in the tomato juice as well. Make sure that's in all of your jars, and then I just go ahead and fill these up as I go. Okay, so I just went ahead and ran downstairs and grabbed some lids and bands so that they were up here. And then that juice is filled up, so I'll go ahead and take this sieve back out of here. Give it a good stir. Make sure you're like scooping from the bottom so you get a good mix of the salsa. So I've been doing this for 2 years at this point, so I don't feel the need to like use the end of the debubbler to measure the headspace, but if you feel like you need to, go ahead and measure it. It doesn't have to be perfect, just has to be close. So once you get all of your jars filled, get a rag and make sure you wipe the rims really good so that you get a good seal. So I'm just gonna go ahead and wipe the edges of these off on all of them. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get lids on all of these. And when you put your rings on, make sure you don't crank it on the jar like how I do it. So I only, if you don't want to twist your wrist, just twist your fingers. Like that's about as far as it can go. You definitely don't want to start cranking the lid on, because then it's not going to have room to expand if it needs to. So one jar done. Look at that, isn't that beautiful? Super exciting. So I'm gonna start getting these back in the canner, processing the rest of all of the other jars, and I will meet you back whenever I get them done. I got the first batch of salsa done. This canner specifically holds 10 pints. You do not need to buy an actual water bath canner. You can use any pot that you have. If it doesn't have like a rack at the bottom, you can fold a towel and put it down. You can also buy some smaller racks to fit different pots and things, and kind of just utilize what you have. So definitely don't go out and buy this because you don't need it. Utilize what you have and make it work for you. But this is what I have. It holds 10 pints, and you want to make sure that there's at least 1 inch to 1.5 inches of water on the top of your jars before you start the canning process. So this is all loaded up and ready to go. I went ahead and flipped my oven on high. So we are gonna wait for this to come to a rolling boil before we start our timer, and then we are gonna process these for 20 minutes. So after these are processed and cooked, I will meet back with you guys. I think I have enough to do another batch. So I think we're gonna get about 20 pints between the salsa and the juice. So that's awesome. So I'm gonna go ahead and let these do their thing, and I'll see you back in just a bit. Here's a bit of a laugh for you guys. This is my cat Apollo. He is 9 years old, and his favorite thing in the world to sit on is pizza boxes. My niece is down, so we got back super late the other day. We went to my in-laws and swam all day long. I did not have time to cook dinner. Usually we don't order takeout, but we did last night, and I always set extra pizza boxes down that are empty just to see like if he'll always sit on them, and he always does. It's his favorite spot in the whole world to sit, is on an empty pizza box. All right guys, so the timer went off for 20 minutes. I go ahead and I let my canner cool down just a bit. Give it like 5 minutes before you decide to take your jars out, and make sure that you lay a towel down on your counter, because a lot of the times your counter is going to be much colder than these jars are going to be coming out of it, and you can bust them by laying them on your cold counter. So get you a towel, and I just go ahead and fold it down, and then I also like to just grab an extra rag to kind of hold the bottoms of the jars, and you'll probably want this to open the canning lid as well, just so you don't burn your fingers. And then I'm just going to start taking these out of the canner. Okay guys, so all in all, I will end up with 19 pint jars of salsa and the tomato juice. So I'm super happy to have that. That's really awesome. Was not expecting to get that much, so actually pleasantly surprised. So here are all of the jars that just came out of the canner. These are all the ones that still need to go in the canner. So if you are gonna do like a double batch, I would recommend letting the canner cool down, let the water cool down, so that you're not so it's not scalding hot whenever you go to dump it out in your sink, because you definitely don't want to stick these jars in that canner. Now that these have been sitting on my counter, you want to try and match the water temperature to the jar temperature as much as you can, so that you don't break a jar accidentally. So I'm going to let the canner cool down completely, pour the water out, get new water in there, and then get my second batch processing. So I will do that here in just a bit, but for now, here's the first batch done, and this is awesome. But that wraps up my afternoon of canning. I am gonna do several other things around my house, but for today, after I get this second batch in the canner, I'm gonna be done canning for the day, because salsa it's very labor intensive. It's one of like the more labor intensive things that you can, and I'm not gonna lie, it kind of wipes me out after like processing everything that it takes to make these jars. So I just want to say thanks so much for watching, you guys. I really enjoy doing these types of videos. I hope you learned something. Like I said, I will link down below the exact recipe in the ball book for new canners to follow. I use it more of a guide, so that's just a little bit of a disclaimer. I use it more as a guide, I tweak it, and then I kind of do my own thing. So if you want a legitimate like 2AT way to can it, I will leave that down below for you. Or if you're comfortable doing something a little bit out of the realm of following everything to an exact T, feel free to give this a try. And if you try it, let me know how you like it. And also, if you guys have any other cool salsa recipes, let me know. I'm constantly looking for salsa recipes because, like I said, it's one of my husband and I's favorites. So until next time, guys, thanks so much for watching.